So for today's practice, if you start on your back, where we normally end the practice in Shavasana, or corpse pose. If you're working with other people, extend your feet into the center, finding your long lines in your body. Lengthen your heels away from your head, aligning your ankles with your hips and shoulders. If you have any issues with your low back, you can bend your knees and drop them in towards each other to release the low back. We're tuning into Ujjayi Pranayama and into the movement of that ocean-sounding breath in the body, which hopefully you've been practicing over the weeks, and doing this either before you go to sleep or when you wake up. It's much easier to focus on the subtle realm of the breath when you don't have to hold yourself up. So letting your feet relax, your shoulders release, your eyes close, so you can turn your attention inside. Releasing any tension in your face, so your jaw is relaxed, and yet narrowing the throat just slightly. And hopefully by now, after these weeks of practicing Ujjayi Pranayama and learning how to narrow the throat to create that ocean sound, it no longer feels like work or effort. With practice, it becomes more automatic and easier. So as you narrow the throat, you create a longer breath. It takes longer for the breath to come in and go out through that narrower passage. With your hand resting on your belly, feel that the inhale fills the belly into your hand, and the exhale, the belly relaxes back towards your spine. And feel with your hand and hear with your ears the pace of your breathing. Refining the breath, if it sounds ragged at all, or if it's uneven between the inhale and the exhale, one side of the breath is longer, then give that shorter side a bit more focus. Extend it out without strain, without pushing or pulling. And as you get the breath dropping into the belly and the low back, see if you can feel how the pelvis responds to the breath. If there's any sense of breathing that far down, into your pelvic floor, into your hips. One of the areas we're going to focus on today. And keeping that focus, that first part of the breath in the belly and the low back, as you bring one hand to each side of the ribs, using both of your hands now to feel your ribs. So if you're a woman, you're just under your bra line. And letting your elbows walk out wide so your palms can lay flat on your rib cage. Continuing to breathe into the belly and the low back, and as you inhale and fill, feel the ribs expand with the breath. And then as you exhale, feel the ribs drop back. And then let the belly release. So in this three-part breath, the belly is the first to expand and the last to release. A little bit of focus there, keeping the belly open. Even though your hands are on the front, sense how your ribs open through the side body and into the back. So your back expands down into the ground. And your hands are not over the entire rib cage. So see if you can feel that you have low ribs and you have ribs that go all the way up. And the next area we're going to move into is up towards the uppermost ribs, into the collarbones and the neck. If you want, you can bring a hand up to that area and feel how your breath moves in that area too. So you're creating space here from the inside out, as though you're being filled from the pelvic floor upwards on the inhale, and then releasing from the neck back down towards the pelvic floor on the exhale. This is a very meditative practice. This is a good place to focus and center yourself, and also a good way to release yourself into sleep after a long day. However, we're going to stay awake and move on from here and add movements to the breath. So this next time that you exhale, walk your legs up off the ground and hold onto your shins or the back of your thighs, whichever is an easier reach for you. And draw your legs in so your feet are off the ground. You're tucking into a small ball shape. Keep your shoulder blades underneath you, back of your neck long, so you have a good broad base in your back. And then continue that 3-part breathing. Continue to breathe down into your pelvic floor, hips, belly, low back, ribs, chest, upper back. And as you exhale, draw your legs down. Tuck in a little bit smaller. Like the pressing down, the draw of your arms is helping to press the air out. And then hold, however small you get to, whatever small tuck shape you get into, hold that with the strength of your arms as you inhale. So this posture, this tucked ball shape, translates from the Sanskrit to mean wind-liberating posture, because you're stimulating your digestion. You're massaging your internal organs with your breath and with the compression of your thighs into your belly. So see if you can also feel, aside from that massage of your internal organs, your back opening. With the pressure on the front, the breath ends up going a little bit more into the back and up towards the collarbones and the neck. So you might feel a stretch from the inside out with the full breath in there. We're going to move from this press pose and extend outwards. So interlace your fingers and turn your hands inside out as you stretch your arms above your head. Let your legs just hang out where they are for the moment. And as you turn your hands inside out, if your shoulders are open, otherwise keep them as they are, your little fingers will come close to the ground, reaching through the heels of your hands, and then reach up through the heels of your feet, stretching them towards the ceiling, towards the sky. Draw your toes down towards you. Inhale into that L shape, and then exhale and come back into your tucked, pressed ball shape. So you're bringing your hands to your shins if possible. Keep your fingers interlaced if you can. That gives you a good, easy movement. Inhale, stretch up into an L shape, and exhale and tuck back down. So you're moving at your pace of breathing, using the inhale to create the motion through the body, inhaling as you make a big L shape, stretching through the backs of your legs and your shoulders, and then exhale as you draw your thighs down. So you can really feel how the drawing of the thighs down presses the air out, keeping your back as your platform, your foundation, so your sacrum, your shoulders, your head resting on the ground, stretching up from there and tucking back into there. Hearing your breath in your throat. So this next time that you take your legs up into the air, keep them in the air and together, and bring your arms down by your sides. So your hands are right next to your hips, and push the ground away with your hands so your low back tucks into the ground. You feel more supported through the low back. And then we're going to change the breath. So you exhale through your mouth. Let your belly expand as you inhale through your nose, and then contract your abdominal muscles down into your back, into the floor as you exhale through your mouth. And if you're not sure what's happening with your belly, bring one of your hands there to feel it. Know that your abdominal muscles drop down as you exhale out. So we've done water wheel in the past. We're going to do that here. This next time that you exhale and you tuck your belly down, take your legs away from your head, keeping them together, and just go as far as your belly doesn't lift, your back doesn't arch, and when you get to that farthest point, bend your knees and draw your legs back in, your thighs towards your belly. Inhale and then lengthen your legs up so your knees are above your hips. Exhale. And extend your legs out. The slower your breath here, the more control you have over the breath, and also the more strength you're building in your core. Be really honest about how far your legs go. Only take them to the point that it doesn't pull your belly up or your back off the ground. So you're dropping your belly down as you take your legs out. Absolutely uninteresting how far your legs go at this stage. Much more about how you can use your core to move your legs. So doing 3 more of these, inhaling, extending up, legs as long as they can go without struggle, without strain. Exhale, extend your legs out to your farthest point. And then when you get there, bend your knees to release any tension in the low back. So as you come back in and up, starting long inhale, exhale, extend out. And when you release on your last one, bring your legs back up long. So they're in the air, extending your feet up towards the sky. And look at your feet and look at them to see that they look like they're standing on a ceiling. So you're drawing your toes down. Bring the 4 corners of your feet square. Big toe, little toe, inner heel, outer heel. And then whatever bend that you need in your knees so you're not struggling and you feel your low back is supported. Bring your arms up parallel to your legs, palms facing each other, but your shoulder blades underneath you. Dead bug pose. So finding the broadness of your back and breathing into that. Inhale, expand your back with your breath. And then exhale, think of extending the breath up through your arms and your legs. Finding a little bit more length in your legs with each exhale. Using the foundation of the back on the ground to stretch up from. Aiming the heels of the feet up. The legs are usually the more challenging part to lengthen. Arms are easy. Just keep the shoulder blades underneath you so you don't disintegrate. Dead bug pose looks really simple from the outside, but you can feel how you're using your core and how you're finding strength and length in your legs with this. So we've gone back to Ujjayi Pranayama, breathing in and out through the nose, hearing the breath in the throat. And to release out anything in your legs, we're going to go from dead bug to last dance of the dying bug. So let your arms and legs shake out so they're really loose, keeping your back as your foundation on the ground, and laugh as big as you can. Good. All right. Draw your knees back in and hold on to your shins or the backs of your thighs. And notice how you feel. Notice your breath coming back into your breathing. We're adding a sense of humor into this level of practice, recognizing that laughter can be a choice, and it can be a particularly difficult choice to make if you're not feeling like laughing. So initially you might have to fake it, but then notice, even if you fake it, how you feel afterwards. It will release endorphins, feel-good hormones that help lighten your mood. So as you reconnect now with a slower breath, and rock and roll along the length of your spine, if that works for your spine. If not, just rock side to side or circle your knees to massage your low back. If you're working along the length of your spine, use your abdominal strength that hopefully you woke up with some of those previous exercises to create the motion, so that you're determining the pace and the pressure of your spine along the ground with the strength of your core. Go just to your shoulders so you don't put pressure on your neck. So going from your shoulders and then to your sacrum. And when you get to your sacrum, your sits bones, see if you can keep your feet off the ground. So there's a little bit of balancing work involved, like we did with upward facing boat last level. And then connect the breath in if you've lost it, so that you're inhaling one way, exhaling the other. I tend to inhale up, exhale down, but it might work better for you to go the other way. Using your core more than your shoulders, more than your jaw, so you're not lifting yourself up with your neck or your chin. finding how you can place your spine on the floor and then lift your spine off the floor. And when you come up this next time, bring yourself to sit tall so that we can tune in with Om Namo Gurudev Namo, finding your seat, the length of your spine, and then bring your palms together at your heart in Atmanjali Mudra, which is a symbol of connecting into your higher self, however you understand that at this point in your journey. Once you're upright and you're sitting still and tall, reconnect with your breath. See if you can feel what we were doing when you were relaxed on your back before, a breathing from your pelvic floor upwards on the inhale, emptying from the neck downwards on the exhale. So we're tuning into the wisdom within and without with Om Namo Gurudev Namo. If you're joining in with your voice, breathe in for the first of 3. As you inhale, lift your arms up, stretch tall, and then as you exhale, reach them back behind you, opening across your chest. Releasing your arms down, let your eyes open if they were closed, and take this moment to check in with yourself. How are you now? Do you feel any different than you did when you first came onto the mat, into the practice? Before we did those few exercises of breathing and connecting to the core, to the center? Do you have any awarenesses in your body today? Any tight spots or sore areas? And looking back on the time between when you last came to the mat and now, if you've been practicing regularly, did you have any time or make any time for yourself to repeat that last round of practice? So we're going to finish with the toe sit. Get the toes and the wrists open. Bring yourself up onto your knees with your toes curled under, helping your little toes if they need some help. And finding where your heels are under your sits bones, your butt cheeks, so that you're not sitting between your heels, but right on them. Or adjust and be on your knees, or have a block under your knees if this is too intense on your toes. Then bring the backs of your hands right alongside your ribs, so if you're a woman, you're right along the bra line, with your fingers mostly behind you. So that'll bring your elbows forward, coming into chicken pose, which is not an official traditional posture, but one that I made up to find the extremities opening. And that might give you enough of a stretch through your wrists, just breathing into your ribs, into the backs of your hands there. If you want to deepen that stretch in the backs of your wrists, take your elbows and your shoulders down towards the ground, and then see if you can inhale into that. So if that's a little bit too much to take a full breath into, to widen your rib cage out sideways, then soften the pressure down of your elbows. Next time that you exhale, bring your hands out in front and hold on to the fingers and the thumb of the right hand with the fingers of the left as you tuck that right elbow in next to your body, shoulders on your back, and drawing your fingers and thumb back to get the underside of your wrist stretched open. And then breathe as though you're breathing into your toes and into your right wrist, as though the breath could actually connect with what you're doing. Use your next exhale to switch hands, catching the thumb as well as all of the fingers on that left hand. Relax your elbow in by your ribs, shoulders on your back. And as you exhale, release and shake your hands out. Uncurl your toes Press your way back into child pose, pressing the front of your ankles and shins down into the ground, using your hands to help you tuck back and finding a place where you can rest for a few moments. So you might want your hands in front to help you push the ground away, press your hips back over your heels. Allow your next inhale to bring you upright to kneeling, so adjusting your knees if you need to, so you feel stable. Bring your fingertips or your palms to the floor behind you. We're going to open into the quadriceps, the front of the upper thighs. So turn your fingers whichever way works best for your wrists and shoulders. Find where your weight is supported in your hands. And then lift your butt up away from your heels and look at your pelvis. Use your abdominal muscles as well as your buttock muscles to even out the pelvis, to create more of a flat plane and less of an angle where the torso connects to the thighs. So each exhale, draw your belly in towards your spine and up towards your ribs. And make sure that you can inhale into the stretch that creates in your quadriceps, the front of your thighs. Keeping your knees right in line with your front hips so your thighs are parallel. Your butt is probably lifted up away from your heels. If you need to be on the balls of your feet to protect your knees, then your knees are off the ground. If you find that once you've evened out the plane of your pelvis, you have one long line from your knees to your low ribs, and that may not happen today, so don't force it. Just see where you are. But once you start to find that, you find that open plane. If you want to take it deeper, you can bend your elbows and bring your butt a little closer to your heels without losing that long line. Or if you're on your toes, you can also take your knees closer to the ground to deepen the stretch. When you find your edge, the place that you can breathe into, feel free to let your head drop back. You may want to draw your shoulders in to support the neck. If you let your head release back, keep your mind's eye focused on your pelvis, on feeling how the action of your abdominals and of your gluteal muscles, your buttocks, helps to tilt the pelvis, open the thighs, and make sure you can breathe into that, keeping everything that you have now. Just change the knees. Walk them out as wide as the edges of the mat and see how that changes what you have going on in your thighs. If you're up on the balls of your feet and that's become a little bit too much in your toes, adjust. Uncurl them. Be on your shins instead. So now you have a little bit more room for your buttocks to be between your heels. You might find that you can create even more of a tilt of your tail forward with each exhale. Notice how the stretch in your thighs has changed. It might not feel quite as intense or so much localized on the front of the thighs. It might feel more like it's winding around. Use your next inhale to push the ground away with your hands, lift your torso up and shift your weight forward so you can bring your hands forward in front of your knees. Keep your knees as wide as the mat. Walk your feet out behind your knees so they're also as wide as the mat. Curl your toes under and shift your weight back so that you're on the balls of your feet, preparing for squat. So if you're a veteran squatter, you can bring your feet closer together, but that's only if your heels easily reach the ground. If that's not the case, best to keep your toes just slightly off the edges of the mat to give you some balance and a sense of grounding, taking the heels down. Once you find as far as your heels are going to drop down, and you've checked that your feet are the same angle left to right, it might feel like they are, but look and see if that they are, because a lot of times you have one side that's tighter and you don't even realize it. Then lift your heels up. So now that you know they're even, lift them up enough that you can lift your sternum up, so you can draw up through your rib cage. And bring your lower arms inside your knees and press outward so that you find a stretch on your inner thighs and a sense of the weight shifting more evenly across the ball of the foot. So it's not all in the big toe ball. Feeling the evenness between the left and the right foot, and then also within each foot, between the big toe and the little toe within each foot. And also finding your stretch on your inner thighs. And then you're going to add into that a sense of leveraging your rib cage, your sternum up, and your shoulders onto your back. If they've rolled forward, press out with your arms to draw your shoulder blades back. Wrap them onto your back. And then if you want to play with taking your heels and your tailbone a little closer to the ground, great, but do that very, very slowly so that you can find where's the point when that action of dropping down through the back body tugs on the opening of the knees and of the chest, the shoulders. So prioritize getting the knees out over the feet, even if the heels are lifted, and bringing your shoulders onto your back. And then to test what's holding what, take your arms into center, so they're extending out shoulder level, and then notice if your knees have rolled in. Activate your outer hips and thighs to open the knees out of your feet, and then activate your core strength to lift your chest up without lifting your shoulders up off your back. And make sure you can breathe into all of that. As you exhale next, release your hands down, come into cat and cow. Hopefully, by this point in these practices, you're familiar with cat and cow, and you can find your way there. Find the pressure down through your shins and the base of your fingers to open your back up towards the sky in cat pose. So you might have been feeling your shins from your squat. Press them open here, and then find the opening of the front body in cow. Roll from your tailbone up to your head, and as you roll into it, you find your movement with your breath. So you're leading from the tailbone to the head on each part of the breath, leading from the breath, from the inside. As you find those two elements, the breath and the spine, then check your alignment. When you drop your head down on cat pose and you're arching your back up towards the sky, see that your knees are under your front hips about a fist width apart and your thighs are parallel. See that you can't see your feet because they're behind your knees. And when you lift your head for cow, feel that your arms are wide enough that you can draw your shoulder blades back and draw your chest forward between your upper arms. If the hands are too close together, it will feel congested in that upper chest, upper mantle area. Give yourself room. Take your shoulder blades back away from your neck and in towards each other each time you inhale, so you get a little bit more mobility in the upper spine, in the upper rib cage. And this next time that you inhale, return to neutral, table position. We're going to turn off the side of the mat for Mandukasana, frog. So keeping your knees on the mat, and as you move into this, feel free to take the alternate option if your knees are not happy. But try this first. Walk your knees out from your hips, keeping them right in line with your hips. And if possible, come to the inner thigh. So instead of being on the kneecap, on the knee joint, bring yourself just inside to the inner thigh. If your inner thighs will allow that stretch. Look back, align your toes with your ankles and your ankles with your knees so you have right angles at all of the leg joints. And engage your toes a little bit. Draw them up slightly towards the knees to help protect the knee joints. Once you have all of those angles, bring yourself down onto your elbows so your shoulders are more level with your hips. And find your breath in here. If you have any knee injury, you can do the same posture on your back, lying on your back, using your hands on your inner knees to press your knees out to the sides to get a stretch on your inner thighs. Give it a try first. Check in. See if you can breathe into what you're doing. Play with it and adjust it. And then if it doesn't work, try the option lying on your back. Tuning into your ocean-sounding breath here. Keeping your shoulders broad on your back, your low back long so it doesn't sway. It's a little bit of engagement of your belly into your low back, jaw relaxed. You can either stack your fists and rest your head on your fists or just let your head hang. If the intensity starts to diminish and you'd like to increase the stretch, take your hips back just a little bit towards your feet and that should re-intensify it. Notice whether or not you're holding up against this intensity. This is a passive stretch, which means once you get the alignment of the bones, your practice here is to surrender, to release. Notice the connection that you make to the floor through your legs. So inner big toe, inner ankle, inner knee, left and right. Is there any difference in that pressure? And if there is, see if you can make little adjustments, little shifts, micro movements that help you feel more even, more symmetrical. Staying tuned into your breath. So in this level 5 practice, we're going to do an upright version of this frog posture. See if you can get a sense now of how wide the hips are opening when the knees are aligned with the ankles. And this will give you a sense of how it'll be when you're standing up. To release out of this without yanking your inner thighs back into action, you can either release forward if that feels like it'll work for your knee joints, so you come into splat frog, or you can walk back onto your hands and press the floor away with your right hand. Use that pressure to draw your right knee in a little bit, and then do the same with the left hand and the left knee, but take your time to edge back in so you don't yank your muscles back into action after this deep stretch. And as you bring yourself back together, come into your squat again. So turn to face off the front edge of the mat and find your feet as wide as they were in your first squat before frog, and seeing if Mandukasana, frog, has influenced your squat, Malasana. So feeling for the grounding through the heels, even if they're not touching the ground, the opening of the knees over the feet, so the balance across the balls of the feet, and then the lift of the core from the hips. From the opening of the hips. Rise up through your core, broaden across your chest, across your upper back. When you find all of those varying things happening, see if you can feel what we were playing with in that last level with the back bending. That relationship between the tailbone dropping down in the back body and the sternum lifting up in the front body. So you're finding this maximum length of the torso, front to back, and on either side of that, the hips and knees opening, and the shoulders opening. Use your next exhale to release into a cat pose. Press your shins open to balance out from the squat. So finding your alignment of hands and feet, and arch your back up on the exhale. Push the ground away like you're pressing the air out of the body. Press your shins and your feet down, and take an inhale into cat pose, so still arched up. Another exhale, and then as you inhale next, come back through table and step your right foot forward for a low lunge. Curl your back toes under, and we're going to transition from this low lunge into a high lunge. So lift your back knee up, bringing your feet parallel to each other and to the short ends of your mat. Let your knees soften a little bit once you find your feet, so you can uncurl and make your way up to standing, checking that this distance between your feet is manageable. If it feels like you're going to slide into a split, narrow your stance. Once you're upright, lift your 10 toes and press the outer edges of your feet into the ground so your arches are engaged. Use that lift of your toes and your arches to lift your kneecaps. Think of drawing your kneecaps, thigh muscles upwards, so you're not locking your knees back, but lifting them up instead. And then bring your hands to the back of your skull and lift your head up away from the ground. Drop your shoulders down away from your neck, and then begin to move your hips in circles, keeping your head relatively still. Once you can feel that your head and shoulders are not following your hips, bring your hands down to your hips so you can feel the front hip bones with your fingertips and the hip crests on the sides with the palms of your hands. Feel the action of the muscles and the movement of the bones as you continue to circle your hips, keeping your legs long and your spine long, making big circles with your hips as though your hips are a hula hoop. Once you have a sense of your hips moving, your hands can either stay there as long as your shoulders don't creep up, or you can create little rabbit paws by bending your elbows, letting them relax by your sides, and letting your hands hang from your forearms, which are parallel to the ground. The advantage of this, even though it looks fairly naff, is that your hands are relaxed and your shoulders are relaxed. And then you also have your inner elbows to move your outer hips towards to give you a place to open out into. If you feel balanced, close your eyes. This is a really simple movement, but very effective. And what this movement reminds me of is the way water wears away stone, not usually in one fell swoop, but over time, with continued application of the water over the stone. So each circle, If you're finding any tight areas in your hips, use each circle to just carve out a little bit more space. And you may want to connect your inhale into that tight spot. And this movement also gives us a sense of how complex the hips are, how much is actually involved. So notice if you're feeling this in your inner thighs, which we don't necessarily think of as the hips, or in your low back. The next time that you inhale, change the direction and see if that feels any different. And at that transition point of going the other way, check that your legs are still long and that your spine is long. So if you find that you're sinking into your low back, imagine your head as a hot air balloon being drawn up towards the sky, taking your spine with it. So you're lifting out of your low back. There's more space in there. This movement can be really effective for releasing tension in the low back. This is also a really great one to do with some music playing, some music that makes you want to move. So if you're practicing with somebody else, if possible, close your eyes so that you're tuning your attention inside. And even if you're practicing on your own, if you feel balanced, close your eyes and drop your mind's eye into that circularity, into that sense of flow. It's one of the key words for the hip area, flow. In these last few breaths, these last few circles, imagine that you're some exotic creature, and this is your mating dance, and that the movement of your hips is drawing your mate towards you. There's a sense of provocation. This area is all about the relationship we have, the intimate relationship we have with ourselves and then with the other. Everybody's eyes are closed. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Find out what it feels like to create that big, sexy, circular, seductive movement. So notice if your jaw clenches at that word or that idea of sexy. Find space between your top and bottom teeth and let your tongue relax in your mouth. Just play with this a bit. And then bring your hips back to center. Let your toes relax, your arms lengthen down, bend your knees a little bit, and feel how that bend in your knees takes your weight down into your feet. So you can really trust your feet on the ground. But at the same time, lift up through the back of your skull. So your spine's long. So it's kind of like a martial arts horse stance. Just feeling, what has that simple movement done to your hips? What are you feeling in your legs, in your pelvis? We're going to continue to open the hips and do that standing frog pose I talked about earlier. So if your eyes are closed, open your eyes, turn your heels in or your toes out or a combination so that you have a slight angle. If you go too wide with the toes, it's hard on the knees and it's hard to balance. Keeping your knees bent, same as we did in the squat, open your knees out over your feet. So to help that alignment, lift your toes. So you lift your inner arches. And then bring one hand to your belly and one hand to your low back and draw your belly in and up, just like we did with the core work in the beginning. So you feel your low back lengthen and your tailbone drop down like it's weighted. Notice how this affects the opening of the knees. So see if you can keep your core lifted and long and press the outer edges of your feet into the ground. So if it feels like your feet are too wide or too narrow, adjust. See if you can find where your knees are over your ankles. Now that you have the foundation in the legs and in the core, we're going to add the arms in. Bring your arms out to the sides, parallel to the ground. Turn your palms to face up and then bend your elbows and look to see that you have right angles at your inner elbows. So your arms frame your head like a big picture frame around your head, spreading your fingers out and your shoulders down. Let your legs and your core hold you up and find your breathing in here like you're suctioning the breath up out of the ground, pulling it up through your legs until it joins at your spine, drawing it up your spine and extending it out through your arms and your head on the exhale. Next time that you inhale, lengthen your arms and your legs by pushing the ground away with your feet. And as you lengthen up, bring your feet parallel to each other and to the short ends of the mat, like you're standing on train tracks. Take a breath here in 5-pointed star. Shoulders on your back. And as you exhale, turn towards your right foot. So you're twisting your torso, keeping your hands opposite each other, and then release over, left hand towards your right leg, wherever it gets to without bending your knees. Inhale, push the ground away with your feet, lift up with your thighs and your belly, and turn towards the left. And then exhale and release over. This is called windmill. Find your pace with it. Keep it as slow as you can, as though you're moving through something denser than air. Inhaling and coming up, and turning your torso to face off the short end of the mat before you exhale and release over, so that you get a bit of a twist in the spine. And finding where you can get to on your leg, don't worry about reaching your foot, unless that comes easily to you without bending your knees. So if you tend to bend your knees, look at them. Each time you release down, let your head release down and look at your knees. What's happening with them? Instead of bending the knees, lift them up. Lift your kneecaps, your thigh muscles up. The more you engage on the front of the legs, the more you support the release on the back of the legs. If you have any fear in your low back, try engaging your core to support your low back and not going down as far. But go to the place where you feel ease, still making change, opening space, but not creating more tension or more fear. If with all those adjustments you still feel fear in your low back or hamstrings, then bend your knees. Balance the stretch with safety. This next time that you release your left hand over towards your right leg, hang there, stay there, and let your head release down. Think of inhaling up through your legs, drawing the breath up until your sits bones, your hips lift away from your heels, and then exhaling down through your spine, letting your head release down, feeling, visualizing how the breath in the body takes you deeper into the stretch. Notice what's happened with your hips, if you've sunk the left hip down. If you feel a real deep stretch on your inner left thigh, then lift the left hip up towards the sky and even out your butt cheeks so they face evenly off the long edge of the mat behind you. Another way to find that is to press the outer edges of your feet evenly into the ground. So once you find the weight in your feet even and the hips even, keep your head released down and just change your arms. Take your right hand over towards your left leg. Notice when you make that transition how you might get that inner right thigh stretch and your right hip might sink. So lift up through your right kneecap, right thigh muscles, square your hips. Get a sense of your feet even on the ground, your hips even in the air. And then long from there, let your spine release down long. Let the weight of your head take your spine longer to help you be with what you feel. Inhale up through your legs, exhale down through your spine. Just let your left arm hang up in the air. Your head hang down. To come up out of this pose without strain, bend your knees a little bit and uncurl your spine as you release your arms, bringing yourself back up to standing, keeping the legs still wide. And then we're going to come into Kali Devi again. So that was that wide-legged standing squat that we did before. Take your toes out conservatively so that when you bend your knees, you can get your knees to aim out over the middle of your toes. Draw your belly up so your low back is long. Align your shoulders above your hips so you're not leaning forward. So get a sense of the back of your head, your shoulders, and your buttocks all against an imaginary wall. And then add your arms in, bringing your arms out to frame your head, keeping them light, because what's holding you up here are your strong legs and core. If you're forgetting about the feet or forgetting about the knees, lift your toes to help protect the knees and to take the weight into the outer edges of the feet. Find the depth of your stance, where you feel your thighs come alive and you can still breathe. So Kali in Hindu mythology, Kali Devi, the goddess Kali, is a goddess of time. She's an incarnation of the primal force of the universe, Shakti, female energy of the universe. And in this incarnation of Durga Ma, the Divine Mother, she rides a lion or a tiger. So if you think of this as your tiger riding stance, as Kali Devi, she also wears a garland of skulls. She's no nonsense, intense power. So these last 3 breaths, we're going to extend the tongue long, stretch it out over your chin, and roar like a lion or like a tiger. Inhale as you lengthen your legs. Push the ground away. Lengthen your arms, release them. Turn your left foot to face the front edge of your mat. Push off with your back foot and step it up to join your left foot. You might need a few steps so that you're standing at the front edge of the mat with your feet finally together after all that wide-legged work. And then moving into Utkatasana, intense pose, so we're still working the thighs. Bring your core into action, draw your low belly in and up, so feel free to feel that with your hands. Draw your belly in and up so your low back is long. As you bend your knees, stick your butt out towards the back edge of the mat till you feel your weight come onto your heels. And notice how when you aim your butt back, that creates the natural curve or lordosis in the low back. But support that natural curve with your belly tucking in, keeping space between your vertebrae. And then find the depth. How much do you want to bend your knees until you feel your thighs are awake and alive? As you bring your arms up parallel to each other, broad shoulder width apart, so you have your chest open, that may help you balance and enable you to take your weight down and back a little bit more. Take a quick look down and see that you can see your big toes inside your kneecaps, so your knees haven't collapsed into center. Your arches are still lifted. Your internal foundation in your feet is still engaged. And then imagine, again, that your breath is coming up from the feet through the angular lines of the legs and the spine. This posture looks like a lightning bolt, so see if you can find that strong energy, not only of lifting up through the core, but also of dropping down through the back body, shoulders, and the tailbone, weighted down. The next time that you exhale, fold forward, and as you release your upper body forward, lift your legs up, lift your toes, your kneecaps, coming into standing yoga mudra. So as you draw your legs long, bring your arms behind your back, interlace your fingers with your palms facing each other. Look at your toes. Lift all 10 toes up, both inner arches lifted up. Look at your knees, draw your kneecaps up, quadricep muscles engaged. Think of your sits bones under your butt cheeks, tilting up away from your heels. And feel your weight is over your arches instead of leaning back over your heels. Notice how that changes the stretch. As you exhale, release your spine from your hips. Let your head drop down. Let the top of your head drop towards your toes. Draw your arms towards each other with the muscles of your upper back, as though your shoulder blades want to move across your spine and touch each other. Your wrists might come together, they might not. Really depends on your flexibility. So it's a combination of drawing your arms towards each other and away from your back. Same kind of visualization here we've been working with, of inhaling from your feet up through your legs to your hips, drawing your hips a little higher at the full point of each inhale, and then exhaling and releasing down from there through the top of your head. So you create a circuit with the ground. The next time that you exhale, release your arms, bend your knees, relax your toes, bring your fingertips down by your toe tips on either side, and step your feet back towards the back edge of the mat. As you bring your feet back, line them up with each other. Look at your hands, check that they line up with each other, and your wrists are broad shoulder width apart as you spread your fingers out. And then bend your knees and lift your heels up above the balls of your feet. Lift your heels up really high, keeping your knees bent, your heels lifted. Push the ground away with the base of your fingers. Lengthen your arms and move your chest back towards your thighs, so your tail lifts up towards the sky. See if you can find that sense of your sits bones, your tail, leading up. And then keep that as you slowly start to stretch your heels towards the ground, only going to the point where your low back doesn't round towards the sky, where you keep your tail lifted. Bringing your ears between your arms, a lot of space around your neck, your breath flowing, even though you're upside down. Give yourself some breath. Use your next exhale to release your knees. Uncurl your toes. Keeping your hips right above your knees, walk your hands a little farther forward. So we're just going to do the upper body portion of what you just did. Keep your hands broad shoulder width apart and let your forehead rest on the ground. If your knees are sensitive, shift your hips back a little bit so you're not right on the kneecaps, but you still have your butt up in the air. Press your shins down to give you a little bit of foundation. And then as you rest your head on the ground, push the ground away with your hands, keeping your hands broad shoulder width apart so that your elbows lengthen. See if you can find 2 long lines, one from each hand, the heel of each hand, to each hip. And then in those long lines, sway down at your shoulders. Drop your underarms, your chest, the front of your throat down towards the ground. Often what happens here is that the belly drops down, the low back sways. So tuck your belly up a little bit, support your low back so your tailbone's pointing away from your head, and then release your chest down until you feel that stretch in your shoulders. See if you can do that without your elbows touching the ground, keeping your hands broad shoulder width apart, breathing into your shoulders. This is puppy dog stretch. Last level of basics, we're going to take a look at taking puppy dog into down dog. So we're using the knees on the ground here to prep the shoulders, to open them for the up off the ground version of this, down dog. Use your next exhale to push the ground away with your hands. Walk your hips back over your heels so you're coming into extended child. Once you find where your hips are over your heels, check that you can rest your head on the ground. So you might need to walk your knees wider if it doesn't rest easily. Bring your hands around behind your back, yoga mudra. So it's the same arms that you did standing at the front edge of the mat. Interlace your fingers, and because you're probably interlaced the same way as last time, slide all of your fingers over one so your other thumb is on top. And then draw your arms up away from your back and in towards each other, keeping your hips resting on your heels and your head resting on the ground. As you lift your arms up, reach them up towards the sky, like you're trying to lift your whole body off the ground, so your shoulders don't slice down into your neck. Keep them away from your neck. The next time that you exhale, release your arms, roll over onto your back. We'll come back to the place where we started this level 5, Shavasana, corpse pose. And as you find yourself long and aligned, ankles in line with hips and shoulders, let your feet release off to the sides. Turn your palms to face up as you bring your arms a comfortable distance from your sides so they're not crammed in next to you. And let your upper back broaden. When you relax your hands and your arms, notice if your lower back isn't quite happy. If that's the case, shift your bum so that you can release into your lower back. And let go of the weight in your head. So for a few moments, anything that plagues your mind can drop away. Allowing your head to rest heavily on the ground and your eyes to close and be still. And your jaw to slightly open. So your mouth may be closed, but there's space between your top and bottom teeth, so your jaw is relaxed. Let that release down into your throat, so you feel spacious in the channel of your throat. At this stage, you can let go of the breath as well as the body. Allowing your muscles to be heavy. So particularly noticing some of those big muscles in the thighs and the buttocks that we were working with today. And if it feels like they're wrapped in tight towards the bones or the joints, imagine them like a heavy fabric draped over the bones. And then keeping as much of that ease as you can, that spaciousness that you've imagined, hopefully felt in your body, keep that with you and engage only what you need. Be conscious in this transition. Deepen your breath. Extend your breath through your torso and feel that. And then imagine your breath extending beyond your torso, right down into your arms and legs and up into your brain. And somewhere in the next few breaths, stretch long, reach long through your legs and lengthen your arms above your head as much as works for your shoulder joints. And as you lengthen out long through your body, on your exhale, roll over to your right side, finding a comfortable place there. Even though it's a transition, keep it easy. Bend your knees, let your head stay relaxed. Bring your left hand in front of you to push the ground away. Uncurl without a lot of effort. Bring yourself up to sit tall. And as you come upright, find your comfortable seated position, the length of your spine. Keep your ocean-sounding breath with you. Stretch your fingertips down towards the ground without putting any weight in your hands, so you're holding yourself up through your core strength. Imagine you're breathing from your pelvis, just like we did lying down, from your pelvis up to your neck. As you exhale next, keep all that lift and let your head roll to the right side. Extend your breath through your torso and feel that. And then imagine your breath extending beyond your torso, right down into your arms and legs and up into your brain. And somewhere in the next few breaths, stretch long, reach long through your legs and lengthen your arms above your head as much as works for your shoulder joints. And as you lengthen out long through your body, on your exhale, roll over to your right side, finding a comfortable place there. Even though it's a transition, keep it easy. Bend your knees, let your head stay relaxed. Bring your left hand in front of you to push the ground away. Uncurl without a lot of effort. Bring yourself up to sit tall. And as you come upright, find your comfortable seated position, the length of your spine. Keep your ocean-sounding breath with you. Stretch your fingertips down towards the ground without putting any weight in your hands, so you're holding yourself up through your core strength. Imagine you're breathing from your pelvis, just like we did lying down, from your pelvis up to your neck. As you exhale next, keep all that lift and let your head roll to the right side. As you release the weight of your head, take your next inhale and lift it up from the pelvis, through the belly, through your back and ribs and chest, all the way up into the open left side of your neck, creating a deeper stretch. Keeping the same contact left to right in your hands so your shoulders stay even. You're not rolling your shoulders to follow your head. Feeling both waists are long and even. If you want to intensify this, turn your palms up and tuck your elbows in so you look like Lady Justice with the scales. If that feels like too much and you're not breathing, then just keep your arms long. Give that side of your neck one more inhale, and as you exhale, release your head down along your collarbones. And as you roll through center, hold onto your knees and curve back through your spine. Breathe there for a moment, perhaps rolling your chin along your collarbones if that feels good. As you inhale next, draw yourself upright again and stretch your fingers towards the ground. Roll your head to the left, finding the angle that you can release the weight of the head without holding tight in the body or breath. Breathing up into the right side of your neck. Does this side feel any different? If it's too intense, you'll know it, because the breath will change or will get lost, or you'll find that you're clenching your jaw, or you'll be trying to hold your head. You can let your head go. This next time that you inhale, lift the space of the breath up into your neck. And as you exhale, release your chin down along your collarbones. When you get to center, keep your head dropped down. Inhale and stretch your arms up overhead, and let your head be lifted up by your chest and your breath. Bringing your head and your arms up, bring your palms together, gather up whatever sort of energy you'd like to carry with you off the mat. Collect it between your hands and draw it down along the center of your body. Acknowledging yourself in your practice, giving yourself a namaste, an acknowledgement of your inner light. If you're practicing with anyone else, acknowledging them as well. Namaste.